If the polls are right, this is going to be a change election in Scotland too. For the first time in more than a decade, the SNP looks likely to finish second behind Labour. The SNP leader, John Swinney, joins us now. Good morning, Mr. Swinney.
Morning, Trevor.
Can we just start with a very urgent issue? We understand that because Scotland's school holidays have begun, there will be people who will have left to go abroad before their postal ballots have arrived. How serious an issue is this for you?
It is a serious issue, Trevor. I warned when the election was called that it was going to take place during the Scottish school summer holidays, and many of our schools broke up for the summer break during last week, some of them as early as Wednesday. And we've had significant reports of people who were planning to vote by post, who had applied properly for a postal vote before the deadline of the 19th of June. And those postal ballots have not arrived with people, and some of them have now left the country and they have been disenfranchised because of the timing of the election, which is something I deeply regret. And I warned about when the Prime Minister took the decision to have the election during the school holidays. I welcome the fact that a number of local authorities in Scotland have taken emergency measures to establish centres which could enable people to exercise their postal vote if it has not arrived by post already. And I've made it very clear my concern about the fact that some people will be disenfranchised because of these arrangements.
Well, there will be people who are able to watch Sky News from abroad. Do you have any advice for them if they're in that situation?
There is, if they're out of the country, unfortunately, there is nothing that can be done. They have to be here to be able to exercise their postal vote if it's been delivered to their house, or if there is an alternative arrangement in place. There are no other proxy arrangements that can be put in place at such a late date. But I think it's illustrative of the fact that when this election was called, there was no thought given to the fact that it would take place during the Scottish summer school holidays.
All right, let's talk about the current political situation. Every poll in Scotland suggests that you, from a party that dominated Scottish politics, have essentially lost the confidence of the Scottish people. What went wrong?
We've had a bit of a tough time, Trevor. We've talked this through before, and I came into the leadership of the SNP about 7 weeks ago and became First Minister to essentially strengthen the party and to build our relationship with the electorate. I recognise we've got work to do in that respect. I've started doing that. We are in a stronger position in the polls than we were when I came into office, and we are building that trust as a unified and cohesive political party. And it's unified and cohesive political parties that win elections, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Well, you're unified, and you may be unified around a position which rather emphasises why people may be drifting away from you. Is your position still that if you win half of the Westminster seats, which would now be 29 of them, that you will consider that as a mandate to press again for a further independence referendum, and that you would put that as your top priority as a Scottish government?
Well, independence is relevant to the daily lives of people in Scotland. That's my fundamental point in this election, Trevor, because the issues that people are concerned about in Scotland today, the cost of living crisis, the cuts in our public services and cut in our public spending, the implications of Brexit, these are all decisions that were arrived at Westminster. And if Scotland was an independent country, we could take a different course.
Well, there was a referendum. There's a referendum in Scotland. There's a referendum in Scotland, which your previous leader described as a once-in-a-generation referendum. A generation, in my book, is rather more than 10 years.
But lots of things have changed since 2014, Trevor, not least of which the fact that in the independence referendum in 2014, people in Scotland were told, if you want to guarantee your membership of the European Union, you've got to vote against independence. And we lost our European membership, despite the wishes of the people of Scotland to remain part of the European Union. Now, that decision is now having a very severe economic is doing severe economic damage to the Scottish economy. Our economy is smaller as a consequence, as is the UK economy, and Brexit has been an unmitigated disaster for the United Kingdom. And so that's a very significant change in circumstances that I believe alone merits the right of the people of Scotland to decide their own future.
But Mr Swinney, one of the things that doesn't seem to change is that almost everything goes wrong in Scotland comes back to something that Westminster's done wrong, and the solution is independence. Whereas you actually have the power in your own hands to change some things right now, irrespective of independence, for Scottish people. For example, right now, a person earning more than £28,850 in Scotland pays more tax than they would if they lived in England. You can fix that. You don't have to wait for independence. You don't have to come to Westminster. Why don't you concentrate on fixing the things you can fix rather than going back into the independence issue?
Well, we do address issues in Scotland, and the point you've put to me about tax, we took a decision to increase tax on higher earners so we could invest more in our National Health Service, more than was allocated to us through the UK government.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you there for a second? Because, forgive me 1 second, for where I live, are you saying that £28,850 defines a higher earner? I mean, that's a nurse.
That's the tax bracket.
That's a junior teacher. That's a junior police officer.
Yeah, and nurses and junior police officers and teachers will be paid significantly more in Scotland because of the pay deals that we've negotiated to make sure these individuals have higher salaries than they have of your neighbours who are living in England. They also have access to a greater level of early learning and childcare for their 3- and 4-year-old children. Their children who go to university will not pay tuition fees. They will have access to free personal care for their elderly relatives. Young people under 22 will have free bus travel. So yes, people will be paying on higher earnings slightly more in taxation in Scotland than in England, but they will get a substantial number of greater services that are provided by the Scottish Government that better meet their needs than in other parts of the United Kingdom.
But if I may
That's
say so, you're not really
social contract.
You're not really responding to my point, which is, could the Scottish Government remedy what you accepted was, you called it a tough time, but a loss of confidence in the Scottish electorate by doing better? Being in a situation where you're not, for example, axing 450 teachers in Glasgow, where your waiting lists aren't at a record high, where the legendary Calmac ferry actually gets built. It's been delayed yet again. Aren't these the things that people in Scotland really can worry about, rather than yet another go round the independence merry-go-round?
Well, I set out for you a moment ago, Trevor, a whole range of areas where the Scottish Government is delivering advantages and benefits to people in Scotland, like the doubling of early learning and childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds and some 2-year-olds, so that children get the best start in life. The fact that our young people more of our young people from deprived communities are able to go to university, or the fact that young people go to university without paying tuition fees, or the fact that our young people are educated in much higher quality school infrastructure and buildings than was the case when we came to office. Now, the fact that we've got an accident emergency system that's been the best performing in the United Kingdom for nine years. So I could go through all those areas where we're delivering. But one of the challenges is that we're facing the impact of austerity. And that austerity will carry on under a Labour government because they've accepted the fiscal rules of the Conservatives, and that will do damage to Scottish public services.
Mr Swinney, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.